Hello, and welcome back to the Better Humans Project podcast. And I'm your host, Greg Pfeiffer. Today we begin something a little different. Over the next 4 episodes, we're embarking on a series, a deep, multi layered exploration of one of the most fundamental human pursuits that has ever existed. Something that philosophers have debated for millennia, that scientists have studied for decades, that religions have promised, poets have chased, and ordinary people have longed for across every culture, every century, and every corner of the human story. We're talking about happiness. The Pursuit of Happiness is a 4 part series that will take us through 4 distinct but interconnected lenses. Today, part 1, we're looking through the lens of psychology. What does the science of the mind tell us about what happiness actually is, where it comes from, why we seek it, and what role it plays in our lives? In parts 2, 3, and 4, we'll explore happiness through the lens of spirituality and religion, through medicine and biology, and finally through the deeply personal. The individual stories, choices, and philosophies that shape each of our unique relationships with joy. But we start here, with the mind, because before we can pursue anything, we need to understand what we're actually chasing. So let's begin. What is happiness really? So it sounds like a simple question. What is happiness? And yet it has confounded some of the greatest thinkers in human history. The ancient Greeks had 2 distinct words for it, and that distinction, I'd argue, is still one of the most important frameworks that we have. The first is hedonia, the happiness of pleasure, the good feeling that comes from a delicious meal, a beautiful sunset, a night out with people you love, a moment of laughter. Hedonic happiness is real, it's wonderful, and it's fleeting. It's the happiness of the moment. The second is eudaimonia, often translated as flourishing or well-being. This is the happiness that comes not from pleasure, but from living in alignment with your values, from growing, contributing, connecting meaningfully, and becoming who you are capable of being. Eudaimonic happiness is slower to build, harder to measure, but far more durable. Aristotle, who wrote extensively on eudaimonia, believed it was the highest human good, the thing toward which all other pursuits were ultimately directed. Not happiness as a feeling, but happiness as a way of living. Modern psychology has largely inherited this distinction, and the tension between these 2 forms of happiness, the pleasant and the meaningful, sits at the heart of much of the most important happiness research of the last 50 years. But there's a third dimension worth naming here, one that more recent psychology has begun to articulate: engagement, or what psychologist Mahali Csikszentmihalyi called flow. This is the happiness of being completely absorbed in something, a creative task, a physical challenge, a conversation, where time seems to disappear and you are entirely present. Flow is neither purely hedonic nor purely eudaimonic. It is its own category of human experience, and one that is consistently associated with deep satisfaction and well-being. So when we ask what is happiness, the answer is it's not one thing. It's a constellation of experiences, states, and orientations, some fleeting, some enduring, some felt in the body, some lived through the choices we make and the life we build. Building on those foundations, contemporary psychology has developed increasingly nuanced model of what happiness looks like in practice. Martin Seligman, widely regarded as the founder of positive psychology, developed what he calls the PERMA model, which maps 5 core elements of well-being and flourishing. The P is positive emotions. The felt experience of joy, gratitude, serenity, interest, hope, pride, amusement, inspiration, awe, and love. These are the emotions that, when regularly experienced, are strongly associated with psychological health and resilience. E is engagement, the state of being fully absorbed in activities that challenge and stretch us. Csikszentmihalyi's flow. When we are engaged, we are not monitoring our happiness, we are simply in it. R is for relationships. Positive, meaningful human connection. The Harvard study of adult development, the longest running study on human happiness in history, found, after 80 years of research, that the quality of our close relationships is the single most powerful predictor of health and happiness. Not wealth, not fame, not achievement, relationships. M is meaning. This is the sense of belonging to and serving something larger than yourself. Purpose, contribution, the feeling that your life matters beyond your own experience of it. And the A is for accomplishment, the satisfaction of pursuing and achieving goals, not for external reward, but for the intrinsic experience of mastery and progress. Each of these 5 elements contributes to what Seligman calls flourishing, a richer, more durable form of happiness than simple pleasure. Alongside PERMA, psychological research has identified several other important dimensions of happiness. Subjective well-being, how positively we evaluate our own lives, includes both our emotional state day to day and our overall life satisfaction. Psychological well-being, as mapped by researcher Carol Riff, includes self-acceptance, personal growth, purpose in life, environmental mastery, autonomy, and positive relationships. And social well-being, as described by sociologist Corey Keyes, encompasses our sense of connection, contribution, and belonging within our community. Taken together, these frameworks paint a picture of happiness as something far more complex and far more worth cultivating than simply feeling good. So why is happiness important? You might think this question answers itself. Of course, happiness is important. It feels good. But the research reveals something much more significant than that. Happiness isn't just the reward for a life well lived. It is, according to a growing body of evidence, a cause of many of the things we associate with a life well lived. Sonia Lyubomirsky, one of the foremost researchers in positive psychology, has reviewed decades of studies and found that happier people are not just better off subjectively, they are measurably more successful across virtually every domain of life. They are more productive at work. They earn higher incomes. They have stronger immune systems and lower rates of cardiovascular disease. They live longer. They have more and better quality relationships. They are more creative, more resilient, and more generous. This is not a case of successful people being happy because of their success. The research is clear that happiness often precedes and causes success, not the other way around. Happy people approach challenges with more openness and resourcefulness. They recover from setbacks more quickly. They build social capital more effectively. They are, in a very practical sense, better equipped to navigate the world. Psychologist Barbara Fredrickson's broaden and build theory, which we touched on in a previous episode, is central to understanding why. Positive emotional states don't just feel good in the moment, they literally expand our perceptual and cognitive field. When we are happy, we see more possibilities, make more creative connections, and build more psychological and social resources. And these resources compound over time. Happiness, in other words, is not a luxury, it's a foundation. And at the societal level, the importance of happiness extends even further. Nations with higher average well-being show lower rates of crime, higher rates of civic participation, greater levels of trust, and more sustainable economic behaviour. The World Happiness Report, now in its second decade of publication, has become one of the most cited measures of national progress precisely because the evidence is overwhelming. Happy societies function better in almost every measurable way. So, what role does happiness play in our lives? Understanding the importance of happiness is one thing. Understanding the role it plays, the function it serves in our moment to moment and long term experience is something subtler and I think more personally useful. Happiness serves as a signal. When we feel genuinely happy, not the surface gloss of distraction or pleasure, but a deeper sense of rightness and aliveness, it is often a sign that we are living in alignment, that what we are doing, who we are with, and how we are spending our time reflects our actual values and needs. Unhappiness, by the same logic, is not the enemy, it is information. It is the signal that something is out of alignment, that a need is unmet, a value is being compromised, or a direction needs reconsidering. Happiness also serves as a resource. As Fredrickson's research shows, positive emotional states build our capacity to cope, to connect, and to create. They are not just outcomes, they are inputs. When we prioritize our own well-being, we're not being selfish. We are building the resource base from which we can contribute to others, navigate difficulty, and live fully. Happiness functions as a motivator. Research in self-determination theory, developed by Edward Deci and Richard Ryan, shows that when we experience intrinsic satisfaction in what we do, our motivation is more sustained, more flexible, and more resistant to burnout than when we are driven by external rewards or fear of failure. Happiness, in this sense, is fuel. It keeps us going not because we have to, but because we want to. And perhaps most profoundly, happiness plays a role in meaning making. Happy people don't just experience more positive events, they also interpret their experiences more generously. They find meaning in difficulty, connection in adversity, and possibility in uncertainty. And this is not naivety, it is a cognitive and emotional orientation that the research consistently shows is both learnable and transformative. So, why do we seek happiness? And this might be the most fascinating question of all. Why is the pursuit of happiness so universal? Why, across every culture, every era, every philosophical and religious tradition, do human beings consistently name happiness, in one form or another, as what they most want from life? Part of the answer is evolutionary. Positive emotions evolved, according to Frederickson's model, because they were adaptive. They made our ancestors more exploratory, more creative, more socially connected, and therefore more likely to survive and reproduce. The drive towards happiness is, in part, a deeply ancient biological program. But evolution alone doesn't explain the depth and complexity of the human pursuit of happiness. Because we don't just seek pleasure, we seek meaning, connection, growth, and purpose. We sacrifice a short term comfort for long term fulfillment. We endure difficulty in service of things that matter. We grieve and love and create, none of which a purely pleasure seeking creature would do. The philosopher Pascal famously observed that all of humanity's problems stem from the inability to sit quietly in a room alone. And there is something true in that, something that points to the restless, seeking quality of human consciousness, always oriented towards something beyond the present moment. We pursue happiness not because we are always without it, but because we are wired for growth, because something in us recognizes that there is always more to life to be lived, more depth to be found, more connection to be made. Psychologist Abraham Maslow, whose hierarchy of needs remains one of the most recognizable frameworks in all of psychology, believed that human beings are fundamentally motivated by growth, that once our basic needs are met, we are drawn irresistibly towards self actualization, the full expression of our potential. And self actualization, in Maslow's model, is intimately connected to what he called peak experiences, moments of profound joy, meaning, and aliveness that give us a glimpse of what is possible. We seek happiness, ultimately, because we are built for it, not because it is always available, not because it comes easily, but because we always know how to find it. But because the orientation towards flourishing is written into the deepest code of what it means to be human. And that, perhaps, is the most hopeful thing of all. Now I'm going to touch on the happiness myths, what the research tells us we've got wrong. Before we close the main body of today's episode, I want to spend a few minutes on something that I think is genuinely important, the things we consistently get wrong about happiness and why those misconceptions matter. Myth 1: happiness is something you find. One of the most persistent ideas about happiness is that it's out there somewhere, waiting to be discovered, in the right relationship, the right job, the right city, the right bank balance. But the research is unequivocal. External circumstances account for only a surprisingly small portion of our long term happiness. Sonia Lyubomirsky's research suggests that roughly 50% of our happiness baseline is determined by genetics, our temperamental set point. Around 10% is explained by life circumstances. And the remaining 40%, that's where we have real agency. That 40% is determined by our intentional activities, our choices, habits, practices, and mindset. Happiness is not found, it is, to a significant degree, built. Myth 2: more is better. We tend to assume that more of the good things, more money, more success, more pleasure, more achievement, will make us happier. But research consistently shows the phenomenon of hedonic adaptation, our remarkably reliable tendency to return to our baseline level of happiness after both positive and negative life events. A promotion, a new house, a new relationship, all produce a surge of positive feeling that, for most people, fades within months. Now, this isn't depressing, it's liberating. It means the endless pursuit of more is not the path. Depth is the path. Quality is the path. Presence is the path. Myth 3. Happiness means feeling good all the time. This one might be the most damaging of all, because the pursuit of constant positive feeling, what psychologists call toxic positivity, actually undermines genuine well-being. A full life includes difficulty, loss, frustration, grief, and failure. The research on what psychologist Susan David calls emotional agility shows that the ability to acknowledge, process, and move through the full range of human emotion without being overwhelmed by it is one of the strongest predictors of long-term psychological health. Genuine happiness is not the absence of negative emotion. It is the capacity to hold the full range of human experience with openness and resilience. Myth 4. Happiness is selfish. There is a lingering cultural suspicion that catering about your own happiness is somehow self-indulgent, that it takes attention away from more important things. But the evidence suggests the opposite. Happy people are more generous, more empathic, more socially engaged, more likely to contribute positively to their communities. When you tend to your own well-being, you become a better partner, parent, colleague, and citizen. Pursuing happiness done with integrity is not selfishness, it's responsibility. As usual, I have a weekly challenge for you. This week, your challenge is what I'm calling the happiness mapping exercise. Over the next 7 days, I want you to pay deliberate attention to your own happiness, not as a vague feeling, but as something you can observe, understand, and learn from. Each day, at a moment of your choosing, pause and ask yourself 3 questions. What brought me genuine joy, satisfaction, or a sense of rightness today, however small? What felt heavy, draining, or out of alignment? And what might that be telling me? On a scale of 1 to 10, how would I rate my overall sense of flourishing today? Not just how I felt, but how fully I felt I was living. At the end of the week, look back at your notes. Do you see patterns? Are there consistent sources of genuine happiness you might be undervaluing or underinvesting in? Are there consistent sources of depletion you might be tolerating without questioning? And finally, looking at Seligman's PERMA model, which of the 5 elements feels most alive in your life right now, and which feels most absent or undernourished? But here's what I know. You cannot pursue happiness effectively if you don't know what happiness actually looks and feels like for you. This week is about beginning to build that map. Now we're going to talk about how to use the companion worksheet for this episode. This worksheet is your personal companion to part 1 of the Pursuit of Happiness series on the Better Humans Project podcast. It's designed to take you beyond listening into genuine self-inquiry and discovery. Find a quiet space, set aside 15 to 20 minutes, and move through each section slowly and with real honesty. Some sections invite self-reflection, some invite self-assessment, and some ask you to sit with questions that don't have easy answers. That's intentional. Happiness, as we explored today, is not a simple or single thing, and understanding your own relationship with it takes a quality of attention that most of us rarely give it. You don't need to complete the worksheet in one sitting. In fact, returning to it across the week as your happiness mapping challenge unfolds will deepen the value of both. Keep your reflections private, keep them honest, and keep them curious. There are no right answers here. There is only the fascinating, important, ongoing work of understanding yourself more fully. So, today, in just one episode, we've covered ground that philosophers, scientists, and seekers have been exploring for thousands of years. And yet, somehow, the more we learn about happiness, the more it reveals itself to not be a destination to arrive at, but a practice to engage with, a relationship to tend, a capacity to develop. Let's take a moment to bring it all together. We began by asking what happiness actually is, and we found it's not one thing, but at least three. The hedonic happiness of pleasure and positive emotion, the eudaimonic happiness of flourishing and meaning, and the engaged happiness of flow and full absorption. Each real, each valuable, each worth cultivating. We mapped the terrain more precisely through Seligman's PERMA model: positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment, and explored the broader frameworks of subjective, psychological, and social well-being. We saw that happiness is not a luxury or reward. It is, according to decades of rigorous research, a foundation, a resource that makes us more capable, more creative, more generous, more resilient, and more fully alive. We explored why happiness matters, not just for our own experience, but for our health, our relationships, our communities, and our capacity to contribute. We looked at the role happiness plays as signal, resource, motivator, and meaning maker, and we sat with the profound question of why we seek it at all, concluding that the orientation towards flourishing is not a modern indulgence or a cultural trend, but something written into the deepest code of what it means to be human. And we took an honest look at the myths, the ideas about happiness that the research consistently challenges, that it can be found rather than built, that more is always better, that it means feeling good all the time, that caring about it is somehow selfish. Here is what I want to leave you with today. You are allowed to want to be happy. You are allowed to take that want seriously. You are allowed to study it, pursue it, invest in it, and prioritize it, not at the expense of depth, difficulty, or responsibility, but alongside all those things. In fact, because of all those things, the pursuit of happiness is not a distraction from the serious business of living. It is the serious business of living. And it begins, as all serious things do, with knowing yourself, with paying attention, with the willingness to ask honest questions and sit with the answers, even when they're uncomfortable. This is what we're doing here. That's what this series is about. Next time, in part two, we'll explore happiness through an entirely different lens, one that has guided and sustained human beings for millennia: the spiritual and religious perspective on what it means to live a joyful, meaningful, and connected life. And I think you're going to find it extraordinary. Until then, tend to your happiness, not because life is easy or because you've got it all figured out, but because you are worth tending to. Be curious, stay humble, keep growing. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs it. Leave us a review or reach out at contact@thebetterhumansproject.com. Would love to hear what happiness means to you. This is Greg Pfeiffer, and this is the Better Humans Project podcast. Let's keep building better humans together. Take care.